Greetings, vloggers, bloggers, followers, and potters. Dustin here again from Dustin's Dynasty with another edition of this week's vlog. I want to thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to talk about gullibility and bias, and how, specifically with bias, how bias can relate to gullibility, especially in autistic individuals. Before I get started, I want to give a quick med update because I know everybody's been following along with my vlogs and likewise on my other platforms. So mostly good this week. One missed dose early in the week. Much better than where we've been. We're able to bounce back better. We're actually we're only missed the one med the last few weeks. So definitely the separation of advocating for the separation of the meds and the blister packs has helped somewhat, but we're not 100% there, but we're getting there. We're in a much better place, but hopefully we can go. We've only missed 3 of those the last month, the 3 whole doses the last month. So I'm hoping to go with just missing this 1 dose in this next round, in this current round. So that's where we stand on that. And I just want to update my followers with that. So without further ado, we're going to talk about gullibility in autistic individuals, and how when somebody is gullible, how bias can play into that. I've had many instances. I'm not going to name any specific, but I've had several instances, and even today, as I had one come up in my life, you think sometimes what you hear is you take it for truth and you believe it for the honesty. That is basically what gullibility is. You can be easily wild. You can easily believe something. And when we have neurodivergence issues as autistic individuals, we oftentimes can fall into believing whatever we want. And sometimes this can make us vulnerable. Sometimes we can become a victim of something that we think is just too good to be true. It's something sometimes, we're being more gullible to things makes us more prone to be open ourselves up and make ourselves as autistic people more vulnerable in our lives as we move forward, as we get into adulthood and have that taste of freedom. And sometimes, when we realize, we don't realize it until it's too late. And as a result, drastic outcomes can come apart, and it's not healthy sometimes. And sometimes, it's just in everyday walks of life. So if somebody tells you a story, that's something that you take, and you take that, whatever that piece of information or juicy gossip that you're told, and it may not even be true, or it may not even be the factual evidence, but you have that juicy piece of gossip and you hold it in your brain all day long, and your brain catastrophizes for me, for example, it's not exactly me, but it's kind of the way I could think, is it goes from 0 to 90 in like 10 seconds, and it automatically thinks of the worst possible situation. Or your brain goes into flight mode, and your brain is automatically thinking of the worst possible scenario when it comes to, getting your way out of something or finding your way out of a situation. And that can be difficult because you don't want to make things more problematic for the problem, or where the root of the problem is. And it can at times be challenging when you think something, or you totally are gullible and you totally believe something, and you don't weigh all sides of the issue, or you don't seek the source from where it is coming from. You believe hearsay, you believe the juicy gossip, you believe whatever, and you take that as gospel, and you think that is worth its weight in gold sometimes. And in reality, it could be further from the truth, or it can be a story, or it can be a fallible lie, or it can be a falsehood. All these things, that that you think, and they can be small things or they can be large things. But in reality, sometimes when we're neurodivergent, our brains sometimes they run into overdrive, and that's the only thing we can think about at the time. And our brain is so meshed in these ideas and in these thoughts that it can be very challenging to the point where that's all we can think about, and only their word matters. And it doesn't matter where, if it's even the originating person, where this story, where who that said thing, or said anything. But that's all you run with that first thought you're told, and it's constantly running in your head. And and as a result, if you think it's something that you don't want to hear, or something that may cause a different outcome than what you expect it to be, or it's something that may be a change in your routine or your pattern, then you're going to run with that, and you're going to think that's the truth, and that's the way it's going to be, and I need to find a way out of this situation. It's all of those things. And sometimes it can be cumbersome. But on the same token, as far as becoming a victim or being vulnerable to someone, there's so much out there that's vulnerable in the world. We're talking like email scams, phone scams, a lot of the social media scams of falling in love with people. There's all of these scams, and I think that's the thing. I think I have to say, if you haven't watched it in a different key on PBS, here in the States in the past week, I highly encourage you to do so. You can go online on PBS and find out, find the link to the show. And as I did this week on my day off from doing my normal activity, and I watched that, and I thought, how lucky I am as an autistic individual, not only to be able to have the ability and the capacity to share my thoughts with you as an autistic person, but how, societal, economically, and, how granted I feel that I can even bring this to you out of my home to share with you a story like this. But it made me realize, even as I was becoming an adult, maybe 20 years ago, not even 20 years ago, but how my parents, because of how much they cared and how much they loved me, as how much when they sent me out into the world on my own, even though it was a very close knit in all interior school, they wanted to make sure that I didn't do anything wrong or didn't make myself vulnerable to others. And I think, having that constantly drilled in your head, basically, literally drilled in your head, and told, and having a very cautious parent. And often my mother and I will co-regulate, and she doesn't really say she has anxiety, but she worries about me, and a very, very well valid, she should, because of my autism diagnosis, and the fact that I could open up, and be vulnerable to people, because I don't read things through, I don't understand social cues or societal norms, or things that just seem too good to be true. All of these things, they can make people gullible and fall into things. And I've seen it time and time again. We've seen it time and time again. We've seen it locally where, eight young individuals took a young autistic man and basically brutally murdered him in a field. I mean, these things, they was gullible to go with them and thought he was getting away, but he ended up being murdered. And these are things, these are realities. And sometimes we don't want to face our realities as autistic people, and we constantly don't want to think the world is going to be bad to us. But I think for so long in my throughout my life, I was always continually told about the stranger danger, or about the danger in people, and it constantly, and alongside some of the traumas in my life of service professionals, I think sometimes we were you bring up all these traumas, and then you also have the skills that you were taught, and it brings up a lot of you're more defensive, and it brings down your social ability sometimes. Not that I'm totally social, but if somebody asks something, I'm a little on the defensive sometimes, and that's not no harm to them or no harm to anyone. But in reality, you sometimes your trauma that you, and many autistics have trauma, but I think trauma, and being continually preach the danger of being of the dangers of being gullible to things that just to belong, just for a sense of belonging, or just a sense to belong, or just the true romance or anything. I think sometimes that really puts you, in jeopardy sometimes. And I'm truly thankful that I've had the many professionals in my life and the many services to keep me in line in that area, to know what is right and what is wrong, and along with educating myself and going to enough training sessions and workshops and things of that nature to make sure that I'm not taken advantage of. I think it's taken a lot of work and a long time, and maybe it's why I didn't move out until I was in my 30s, because I didn't feel safe or ready. It's a long step. And with the technological advances in this world, I can see where the younger generations can even have more of a problem. And I think that's why it brings it back home to, in a different key. When I watched that this week, how people of different races and genders and different countries, and it can bring a whole different array of problems. Or if your state or your region is not properly educating individuals, or you're not able to get access to the education, or a cultural difference, all of these things matter. And for me, and just like the one gentleman they highlighted in the documentary that was 84 plus, I think realizing that it was because he had privilege, and I have some privilege to some degree, and that's how I've, in a way, and I have to recognize that and accept that for what it is. And to understand what everybody comes from, all walks of life, and it doesn't make me any better than anybody. It just makes the point that you have to know that where people come from, all walks of life. And sometimes we're more open. That makes them more open to others. It makes them more gullible. And some with bias, more so with bias, it's the fact that you only believe that one thing you're told, and nobody else's opinion matters at that point. And that's all you can think of. You're not willing to see any other side of the story, the issue, anything. It's you're just seeing that one piece of information, and you're running to town with it, and you just can't stop. That is what it is, folks. And sometimes it bites you in the ass. Sorry if I'm blunt, but it bites you in the ass, and sometimes it'll stab you really dark, because I've been there too. So, sometimes we have to realize that we have to take care of everybody in the world. And, I think sometimes we have to realize, as autistic people, and as those who educate or advocate or an ally to autistic people, we have to do our best to educate our autistic individuals, especially those who are unable or limited to communicate, or are limited to be able to navigate society or societal norms, or the dangerous web out there. Hey, we need to educate you on what's right and what's wrong, the power to say no, the power of consent, every other thing like this. And we need to prevent these individuals from being gullible to things that sometimes seem too good to be true, not right. Just trying, where people victimize them, they make them vulnerable, all of these things. We need to be more careful and more cautious. And, sometimes you just have to be more alert. And I think years of me, thankfully, for being in the family that I was raised in, and how that was continually preached down to me all throughout my teens and into my adult years. And I've had several, experiences or several chances to be out in the world and not be taken advantage of. It's not always 100% perfect, but I know, and I've had instances, but luckily I was able to save myself. But it's those who are not able to save themselves and ultimately have to pay the price themselves. So you have to think these things through in life, and just be sure to make sure that individuals, yes, individuals have rights. Yes, individuals should have freedoms and rights, but they also have to know how to protect themselves too, and take care of themselves, and have the right to say no, consent, all of that, because it's what matters. I want to thank you for listening today. I'm going to cut it short today because I got a lot to do, but I appreciated doing this video because I think it was something that came up in my mind today. And, I think it was really, really needed. So I want to thank you again for listening. Be sure to subscribe and subscribe to my channel, like the videos. If you haven't tapped the notification bell, please do. I try to submit a new video every weekend, try to be as prompt as possible with that. Also, if you haven't already, be sure to like me on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and Twitter at Dustin's Dynasty. I'm on the web at dustinsdynastyusa.com, and I have a link tree there as well. My handle is Dustin's Dynasty, and I'm on TikTok at Dustin's Dynasty ASD, and you can also see the mirrored YouTube channel there too. All right, I want to thank you again for listening, and be sure to have a good day, have a good weekend, and if I don't talk to you, have a happy holiday. We'll see you soon.